الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق ونودوا أن تلكم الجنة ورثتموها بما كنتم تعملون والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا وحبيب قلوبنا السراج المنير المصطفى الأمجد أبا القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحاب الغر الميامين. Respected brothers and sisters, respected Maulana Sabari, I greet all of you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Please give me a loud salat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. A man came to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam one time, one of his beloved companions, a man named Fudayl, and he asked Imam al-Baqir about the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja. Specifically, Fudayl asked Imam al-Baqir, when will the Mahdi ajrallahu faraja reappear? What date specifically will the Mahdi reappear? Imam Baqir looks at him and he says, كَذَّبَ الْوَقَّاتُونَ كَذَّبَ الْوَقَّاتُونَ كَذَّبَ الْوَقَّاتُونَ. He says, whoever predicts the reappearance of the Mahdi is a liar. Whoever predicts the reappearance of the Mahdi is a liar. Whoever predicts the reappearance of the Mahdi is a liar. What is Imam al-Baqir trying to convey here? He's conveying, even though the Imam has the hidden knowledge of when the Imam al-Mahdi will reappear, ajrallahu faraja, he refused to explicitly answer the question. Rather, he said that the ones who predict the reappearance of al-Mahdi are liars. Meaning what? Meaning there's more important issues to focus upon rather than just focusing on the date of the reappearance. There are things that one can do in the interim. So what can one do while waiting for the Mahdi ajrallahu faraja? Well, there's a famous hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq who says that the one who waits for al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja is like the one who's a companion of the Mahdi when he reappears. And the one who waits for al-Mahdi is like the one who joins battle with al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja. Meaning the simple act of waiting is as if you're a companion of the Imam upon his reappearance. But the question becomes, how do we wait for Imam al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja? Do we simply sit around? Do we wait at home? Do we hang out at the hookah bars? Or do we hang out at school and just wait for the reappearance? What's the methodology for waiting? What is exactly Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq talking about when he says that to wait is as if you're fighting with Imam al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja? What we're going to do tonight over the next 30 or 35 minutes inshallah is briefly discuss the method of waiting. Specifically, we'll try to relate it back to the ayah that I recited at the beginning. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. So tonight, the discussion will fall into two parts. How can we be a rahmah or a mercy for humanity, similar to the mercy of the Prophet? And secondly, how can we wait for al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja? Salawat. So the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here referring to the Prophet, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have only sent you as a source of mercy for all of humanity. By extension, Imam al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja is also a mercy, because there's a famous hadith from the Prophet, al-Mahdi min itrati. Al-Mahdi is from my family. Al-Mahdi min ahl bayti. The Mahdi is from my family. If the Prophet is a mercy, al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja is a mercy to humanity as well. And by extension, anyone who follows the Prophet and claims to follow Imam al-Mahdi ajrallahu faraja has to be a mercy to humanity. But let's look at this ayah more closely. what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean when He refers to the Prophet as being a mercy for humanity? How was the Prophet a mercy for humanity? And how can we be a mercy for humanity while waiting for the reappearance of Al-Mahdi Ajjallahu Farajah? Well, if you look at the life of an individual, or if you examine the life of an individual, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, salawat. How do we summarize the contributions or the life of an individual? The Prophet ﷺ has a beautiful hadith. He says, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلَهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ صَدَقَةٍ جَارِيَةٍ أَوْ عِلْمٌ يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ أَوْ وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ. When an individual dies, he or she leaves behind everything except for three things. Sadaqa jariyah, continuous charity, أو علم ينتفع به, or beneficial knowledge, أو ولد صالح يدعو له, or a righteous son or a righteous progeny that continues to make dua. So let's examine this hadith within the context of the Prophet's life. How was the Prophet a mercy to mankind? And what did he leave behind that was a mercy for all of creation? وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Notice the ayah here is that the Prophet is a mercy or a source of comfort, not just for the Arab. Allah doesn't say وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَرَبِ, or وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَجَمِ, the people of Persian origin, or وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْأَوْرُوپِيِّينَ, to the Europeans or what have you. Allah doesn't even limit it to humans. He says لِلْعَالَمِينَ, to the entirety of creation, to the entirety of the universe. So how was the Prophet a mercy to the universe? Well, when the Prophet says, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلَهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ صَدَقَةٌ جَارِيَةٌ وَعِلْمٌ يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ وَوَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ. Let's look at these three categories and see how the Prophet was a mercy for humanity by leaving these three things behind. The first category that the Prophet mentions is the concept of continuous charity, or Sadaqa Jariyah. Now, what is Sadaqa Jariyah? Many of us are familiar with the concept of Sadaqah. Sadaqah is an act of charity that you give. Let's say you see a homeless person on the street, you give them $2 or $3 or $5. This is considered an act of sadaqah. Sadaqa jariyah is a type of charity that can, and you'll get benefits from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that one-time act of charity. Sadaqa jariyah, by contrast, is an act of charity where you continue to benefit and where people continue to benefit long after you've made the act of charity. Now this ayah, or this concept of Sadaqa Jariyah, was actually instituted after the revelation of the following ayah in Surah Al-Imran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. You will never attain righteousness, or you'll never become a good person until you sacrifice out of that which you love. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will never achieve righteousness, or you'll never be a good individual until you sacrifice out of that which you love. When this ayah was revealed in Surah Al-Imran, the people came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, what does this ayah mean? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking us to do? The Prophet said, simple. Whatever you love, give for the sake of humanity and give for the sake of the Muslim community. There was a man at the time in Medina named Abu Bakr al-Ansari, and he had a orchard in the city of Medina. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, the most beloved thing to me is this orchard that I had. Abu Bakr al-Ansari. So he said, I dedicate this orchard to the benefit of the community and to the benefit of Islam. So the Prophet takes this orchard, and what he does with this orchard is he actually converts it to the first masjid in Islam in the city of Medina. Now imagine, long after this man, Abu Bakr al-Ansari, makes this charity, people are still continuing to go to the masjid and continuing to perform the salat in this masjid. So an act of charity, or Sadaqa Jariyah, is a type of charity where people continue to benefit long after you've made the sacrifice or the commitment. Imam Ali alayhi salam, if you ever have the pleasure or if you ever have the opportunity to go to Mecca, there's a place between Mecca and Medina called Masjid al-Shajara, which is also called Abyar Ali, or the Wells of Ali. Why is this place called the Wells of Ali? Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his spare time, he would dig wells to help the travelers as they're traveling between Mecca and Medina, or between Medina and Mecca. So whenever people would travel between Medina and Mecca, remember back then, there were no rest stations. So people would stop at the wells of Imam Ali. They would drink from the waters that the Imam had dug from the wells. And Imam Ali alayhi salam would benefit from their acts of charity. And 1400 years after Imam Ali alayhi salam dug those wells, the Hujjaj and the people who go to pilgrimage are still benefiting from the act of charity of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So Sadaqah Jariyah is anything where you make a donation and a commitment and people benefit long after you've made that commitment. It doesn't have to be wells. It can be something as simple as whatever the community needs. Let's say here we're in this masjid in San Diego. You notice that the masjid has a need for a new microphone, or has the need for a new carpet, or a new chair. You dedicate that new chair, a new carpet, a new microphone, and every time that an individual uses those things, you will continue to get charity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the beginning, the concept of Sadaqah Jariyah was really revolutionary, because people were now donating things that were benefiting not just one-time act of charity, but rather continually benefiting humanity. And it wasn't just Muslims that were donating to the Prophet ﷺ. There was a famous Jewish man, and this, by the way, is in the biography of the Prophet of Ibn al-Ishaq. There's a famous Jewish man who lived in Medina called Mukhayrak. Mukhayrak, the Prophet, according to the Prophet, Mukhayrak was the best of the Jews. Why was he the best of the Jews? In the second battle of Uhud, Mukhayrak fought alongside the Muslims, a Jewish man fighting alongside the Prophet. He was wounded and injured by the kuffar. Upon his deathbed, Mukhayrak donated all of his property and all of his wealth for the Muslim community. He said, I have not found an individual more noble and more honest than the Prophet, and I dedicate all of my lands and all of my property to the Prophet. The Prophet took these properties and he benefited the community with them. So the concept of Sadaqah Jariyah, everyone from the Muslim, from Imam Ali alayhi salam, from the Jewish companions of the Prophet, all of these individuals contributed this act of charity, of continuous charity or Sadaqah Jariyah. Now initially people would make simple contributions, like a farm, like property, like something that would benefit the community. But as the Muslim community expanded, the needs of the community continued to expand as well. So for example, you'll find that among the first things that people start to contribute is the concept of a hospital. You know that the first hospitals in the world were established in the Muslim world, and they were essentially acts of waqf. Waqf is a type of contribution or a donation made for continuous charity. And there's actually a British scholar named Peter Poorman that talks about how hospitals were established in the Muslim world. And without this concept of Sadaqah Jariyah or continuous charity, we would have no public hospitals today in the world. So you notice this concept of Sadaqah Jariyah that the Prophet instituted 1400 years ago, people started to establish other things that have benefited humanity, like hospitals. But there's more. The first university in the world that we know of was also an act of Sadaqah Jariyah or continuous charity. By the way, let me ask you, what is the first university in the world? The oldest university in the world? Yes. Al-Azhar? Okay, yes, that's a common answer. Actually, there's a university that's at least 300 years older than Al-Azhar. It's in modern-day Fez, Morocco. And the name of that university is Jami'at al-Qayrawayn, or Al-Qayrawayn University. Al-Qayrawayn University was founded by a Muslim woman named Fatima al-Fihri. Fatima al-Fihri, also called al-Banin, received an inheritance from her father. And she took this inheritance and she dedicated it to finding a masjid. the Masjid of Al-Qayrawayn. Qayrawayn eventually expanded into a university, and the oldest known university, and this, by the way, is according to the United Nations, UNESCO, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, among other people, say that the oldest university, at least 300 years older than Al-Azhar, at least 400 years older than Oxford, was founded by a Muslim woman following this concept of sadaqah jari, or continuous charity. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, the rahmah of the Prophet was in his inspiration to his followers. The people who followed the Prophet, like the Prophet, were a rahmah to the community. They were a source of benefit and mercy to the community. They weren't just simply Muslims that followed the message of the Prophet, but rather they put those beliefs into action by putting things that benefited humanity. So going back to the hadith, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلَهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ صَدَقَةٍ جَارِيَةٍ. The concept of sadaqah jariyah alone it reveals to you why the Prophet, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is considered a mercy for mankind. But there's actually more. The second part of the hadith is عِلْمٌ يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ, or beneficial knowledge. We'll talk about the concept of beneficial knowledge, but first please give me a loud salawat. Ilmun yuntafa'u bih is anything that's a type of beneficial knowledge. Now the thing that the Prophet left behind, and that was a direct revelation from Allah, the message that the Prophet left behind was the Quran, as of course all of you know. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ. From Allah you've received a nur, or a source of mercy, and a book of guidance. The greatest source of guidance and the greatest source of beneficial knowledge in the history of humanity is this Quran. And the greatness of this Quran is really a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger who revealed the Quran to humanity. Now why is the Quran such a great book? Of course all of you know the famous ayah in the Quran, لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبَلٍ لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. If we were to reveal this Quran on a mountain, you would see the mountain shake out of reverence. You would see the mountain shake out of humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ, shaking out of reverence. The Quran is the only book that we know of in the history of humanity that has been unchanged and unaltered since the time of its revelation. Let me repeat that again. The Quran is the only book that we know of that has been unchanged and unaltered since its time of revelation. This is a book that's directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just to put it into context, there is a brilliant book by a man named Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman is a famous Christian scholar who teaches now at Duke University. He's a former priest. He's written several books on the history of Christianity. I recommend that you read a particular book of his called Lost Christianities. Lost Christianities by Bart Ehrman. In this book, he summarizes the amount of differences in the New Testament, or in the Bible. And I was really surprised when I was reading these things about the New Testament from Bart Ehrman. Let me ask you a question. How many copies or how many different versions of the Bible do you think there are in existence today? Any guesses? Just throw out a number. 150. Okay. Well, so Bart Ehrman says there are 4,500 copies of all or parts of the New Testament. So 4,500 copies of the New Testament. We're not even talking about the Old Testament. Now you may say that there maybe are small differences between these different copies. Maybe there's like a word missing here or what have you. Well, so Bart Ehrman continues to say that no one has been able to count all of the differences among the surviving manuscripts. People have tried to count the differences between these 4,000 copies, and they've been unable. He goes to say that some estimates put the number at around 200,000 differences. Others at around 300,000. Perhaps it is simplest to express this figure in comparative terms. There are more differences among our manuscripts than there are actual words in the New Testament. So if there is like 200,000 words in the New Testament, there's more than 200,000 differences between all of the surviving copies. Now, let me ask you a question. How many different copies of the Quran are there? One. If we were to go to Tunisia, or if we were to go to Uzbekistan, or Iran, or Iraq, how many copies of the Quran would we see? The same Quran. And this is the only book outside of religion. Even if you look at copies of Shakespeare, you'll notice that there are differences in the plays of Shakespeare, and that's a relatively recent book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل رأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. This Quran is a powerful source, it's a direct revelation from Allah. When the Prophet says, علم ينتفع به, or a source of beneficial knowledge, the most beneficial knowledge in the history of humanity is the Quran. And by the way, this isn't me saying this. There's a brilliant new book from a scholar at Oxford named The Enlightenment Quran. It's by a man named Ziyad al-Masrafi. I urge all of you to read this. It's called The Enlightenment Quran. And what Ziyad al-Masrafi has been able to find is that when the Quran was being translated into the European languages like French and English, people, the Oriental or the Western scholars started to read the Quran, and they started to get inspired by it. They were inspired so much by it that he claimed that the Europeans who were in a state of dark ages, the Enlightenment was really a function of the Quran, people reading the Quran and being inspired by it. And he has some very convincing statements and quotes from people like Rousseau, from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, from people like Voltaire, even Napoleon, being directly inspired by the Quran. Now, if we see these Western people being inspired by the Quran, what excuses do we have for not being inspired by the Quran? The problem with many of us is, even though this is ilmun yuntafa'u bih, even though this is a beneficial knowledge, many of us don't approach the Quran in the appropriate format. How do we read the Quran? We often read it during the month of Ramadan in a sort of in a rushed state. We're trying to finish the Quran, do the khatim of the Quran, but we don't really comprehend it the rest of the year. The Prophet has a beautiful hadith. He tells us how to read the Quran. He says, اقرأوا القرآن ما ائتلفت عليه قلوبكم ولنت عليه جلودكم فإذا اختلفتم فلستم تقرؤونه. He says, read the Quran in such a way that it causes you to have goosebumps in your skin. Goosebumps, so your skin starts to be shaking, and that your heart gets touched. وَلَنَتْ عَلَيْهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ. And if you're not reading the Quran in this manner, meaning if you're not reading the Quran for the sake of comprehension or for the sake of inspiration, فَلَسْتُمْ تَقْرَؤُونَ. You're in fact not reading the Quran. So when you think you're reading the Quran by just simply going after quantity, the Prophet is telling us, if it's not touching your heart, if it's not touching your skin, then in fact you're just deceiving yourself that you're reading it. Salawat. And one last story from contemporary America. There's a great book from a Jewish scholar named Denise Spellberg. And she has a book called Jefferson's Quran, Thomas Jefferson's Quran. And what does she say in this book? She actually has a beautiful story about how Thomas Jefferson, the third American president, was inspired directly by the Quran. So Thomas Jefferson originally had an English copy of the Quran, an English translation of the Quran, and he found himself not being able to comprehend the language and not being able to comprehend the nuances. So what Thomas Jefferson did is he taught himself the Arabic language, some Arabic grammar, some very basic things, so that he could go back and read the Quran in its original revealed language. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, being inspired to such an extent that he taught himself some basic elements of Arabic grammar, according to Denise Spellberg. Salawat. So far we notice that the Prophet has left behind two beneficial things that have benefited all of humanity. Sadaqah jariyah, or continuous charity, We notice that everything that we benefit from today is a direct outcome from the Prophet. The second concept is this concept of beneficial knowledge. The most beneficial knowledge that we know of in the history of humanity is the Quran. I can spend probably another 4 or 5 hours talking about Western scholars who've been inspired by the Quran, but our time is short. The third thing that an individual leaves behind when he passes away is a righteous child. وَلَدٌ صَالِحٍ يَدْعُو لَهُ. A child that continually makes dua for the parents. What does the Prophet mean here? A man once came to the Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, we've benefited tremendously from your teachings. We've benefited tremendously from your insights. How can we ever pay you back? Can we give you some money? Can we give you some gold, some treasures? The Prophet didn't know how to answer this companion. And then the ayah was revealed. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. Say, and this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling the Prophet, say, I ask you for nothing except the mawadda, or the deep love and deep affection of my progeny. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. For everything that I've done, all of this that I've done, the only thing that I'm asking you for is to love my family and to love my Ahlul Bayt. Now, and then in a later ayah in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ مَا سَأَلْتَكُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ لَكُمْ. Whatever I'm asking you to pay, it's really for your benefit. Now let's look at this ayah. The Prophet, the only thing that he asked us to do was to love his Ahlul Bayt. And this, by the way, is a directive from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet, قُلْ, to the Prophet, قُلْ يا رسول الله, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. I ask you for nothing except for the deep love or the deep affection of my family. Now, this is an ayah that's often mistranslated or underappreciated, and we'll conclude with this ayah, and then inshallah we'll conclude the session. But first, give me a loud salawat, please. So, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. If you look at the English translations of this ayah, they often translate them as, I ask you for nothing except the love of my Ahlul Bayt. But what's the problem here? It's the word love. The word love is probably the most misunderstood and most misused word in the English language. Meaning what? Meaning, think about it. We use the word love to describe our relationship, for example, with food. Like, I love this nukachi, right? I love this nukachi, or I love this banana. I love to eat pizza. We use the word love. We use the same word love to describe our relationship to our mother. I love my mother. To describe our relationship to our father. I love my father. We're using the same word to describe our relationship to an inanimate object and to the person who raised us. Now, why is this problematic? In Arabic, there are at least 12 different words that describe different degrees of love. So, for example, you have the word hub, you have the word ishq, you have the word ghazal, and then you have the word mawadda. The word mawadda is not just a simple type of love where you're loving, a piece of fruit, or you're loving a pizza, but rather it's a deeper type of love. It comes from the root word wid, which means to understand and then to love. Meaning it's a deep love based on understanding. It's not a type of amorous love or a fleeting love or a temporary love, but rather the love gets deeper the more you understand the thing that you're loving. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. And where else do we see this word mawadda? We see it in Surah Ar-Rum, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the relationship between a man and a wife. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And He's placed between you mawadda, or deep love, and mercy. The word mawadda is a deep love based on understanding. This is the type of relationship that we're supposed to have with our spouse, and the same relationship is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us for. Meaning, not just simply saying, I love Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallah Faraja, and then coming to the masjid, and then after this, tomorrow or the next day, I'm telling a lie, or I'm committing some haram against my neighbor, or I'm stealing, or I'm doing ghiba or backbite. But rather, if you truly love Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja, and if you truly love the Prophet, then you'll try to understand their personality, try to become their personality, and show your love by manifesting the attributes and the characteristics that cause you to love them. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means when He says mawadda. Mawadda is not simply coming to the masjid and wearing black during Muharram and say, I have mawadda for Ahlul Bayt because I wore black for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And it's not simply coming during Nima Sha'ban and wearing a nice suit and saying, I love Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja because I sat here and I had some nice sweets and nice desserts and what have you. But rather, mawadda is based on your trying to implement and trying to become like those things that you love. And so we come with the conclusion of tonight's discussion. How do we wait for Imam Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja? Remember at the beginning, we said that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam says that the one who waits for al-Mahdi is like the one who fights on the battlefield with al-Mahdi. Well, the way that we wait is by leaving behind the three things that the Prophet left behind, to become a mercy for mankind. If you love the Prophet, if you love Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja, become a mercy like they were a mercy to humanity. Benefit mankind, benefit society, benefit your community, and benefit your family. If you truly love the Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja, you become a mercy like he was and like his great-great-great-grandfather was, the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The obligation is upon us to become a rahmah for mankind as well. Not just simply to follow the rahmah, but to become a rahmah by our actions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to become among the soldiers of al-Mahdi during his absence and during his reappearance, to count us among his followers in our actions and in our deeds. رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَّسِينَا وَأَخْطَأْنَا رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِصْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِنَا رَبَّنَا وَلَا تُحَمِّلْنَا مَا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا بِهِ وَاعْفُ عَنَّا وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا وَارْحَمْنَا أَنْتَ مَوْلَانَا فَانصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Let's recite Dua al-Faraj for the reappearance of al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Faraja. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kassim. Please say Allah salawat for برای سلامتی همه دوستان اهل بیت، همینطور علمای اسلام، همه دانشمندان، به خصوص دوست عزیزمون جناب آقای دکتر کاظم، از اون صلوات‌های محمدی که از اول مجلس تا حالا نفرستادین. یا علی صلوات مناسب مجلس باشکوه امشب خودم. حالا برای اینکه حالا آقای مجلس نوز کنیم، ناز قدوم حجت ابن حسن یک کف مرتب یه دقیقه این ساعت گرفتم بلند صداش نمیاد.